want a used car? Visit ozcar.com.au.
Mostly clear tonight, mostly sunny tomorrow. A top of 20 in the city, 20 degrees in our west. Right now in town, it's 16 degrees. Humidity, 23%. 13 at Bankstown and Campbelltown, 11 Gosford, 14 at Richmond. I'm Matthew Carstunen. There'll be more Macquarie National News at 9 on your newsletter, 2GB 873.
And now on 2GB Sydney, 3AW Melbourne, 4BC Brisbane, 2CC Canberra, and network stations across Australia. It's time for Nights with John Stanley, filling in for Steve Price.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and I am here looking after Steve Price's show for one night. He'll be back with you on Monday, but I'll be here through until midnight tonight, the evening show right across the country. Sometimes with these shows you actually run through the stations, but having been given a list of the stations this show goes to, we'd be going for the next hour. So if you want to give us a call and be part of the program, 131873, 2gb.com, 3aw.com.au or 4bc.com. I'm looking after things tonight, but Andrew Bolt will join us shortly. We'll be doing all of the usual things that happen on the Steve Price show. And if there's one big pile on tonight, it is the Powerball draw. $100 million, astronomical odds of winning. We'll check on that draw that'll come in the next hour. I heard some fascinating discussions with Ross Greenwood earlier this evening from people of how you deal with winning, how you would cope and how you would arrange. I think that would be the least of your problems. Massive odds, but there were queues of people today. Later in the show, we will talk to someone who I am almost certain has never bought a lotto or Powerball or lottery ticket. You'll be surprised. I think this man will tell us he has never bought one of these tickets. That's coming up later in the evening. In rugby league, the Broncos are playing Souths in Brisbane. We'll keep across that. And at the moment, the Broncos have kicked off with a try. They're leading 6-0. News, bushfires still burning in the southern part of New South Wales. Hundreds of volunteers away from their families, giving up their time. We'll check in on that. Out of Canberra, there's a report that Malcolm Turnbull's planning to announce a big stick approach to regulating power prices using one of the recommendations of the ACCC report to set a price, and the promise then would be of lower prices, and the report suggests this will be a way to lure the rebel MPs on board. We'll get Andrew Bolt's view on that in just a moment. There are obvious rumblings continuing today within the coalition, and some fascinating interviews today with some of the MPs, and particularly an interview that Peter Dutton gave with Ray Hadley earlier today, where Ray Hadley really pressed him and had him dancing on eggshells, I thought. Also, in Parliament today, there was a moment which, and I've seen plenty of question time, and question time's a farce, because it's called questions without notice, but they're Dorothy Dix's from one side, and on the other side, the opposition just gets up and makes statements. They don't expect an answer. But there was a question, a genuine question, that put Malcolm Turnbull on the spot, to the point where they had to smother a little bit to give him a few moments to pull together an answer. Now, the answer he gave may have satisfied some people. I thought it was a bit of a lawyer's answer. I thought it was a bit of an answer that he structured in such a way that gives him a bit of wriggle room, but we'll get Andrew's view on that. I know he's got a thought on that one as well. And on a personal note, this is my first time doing a radio show on 2GB for some, I won't say how many years, it's a long time, but I haven't been on 2GB and or 3AW or many of the stations on the network since I was the national political correspondent for the network. And when I was the national political correspondent, the Prime Minister was Bob Hawke, the Treasurer was Paul Keating, the Opposition Leader was John Howard, Peter Costello was preparing to enter Parliament, Neville Wran had just finished as Premier in New South Wales, Jeff Kennett was leading the Liberal Party, overseas you had Margaret Thatcher in power, Ronald Reagan was concluding his time in office. Now, you'll have differing views on all of those people, and those of my vintage, and I'm about Steve Price's age, but those of my vintage often say, things were better in my day. But you listen to that array of people and you look at what's being served up today, I think things were better in my day. I think Andrew Bolt might agree with that. He joins me now. Hello, Andrew.
Mate, that's a fascinating... Did you say Thatcher? Did you mention...
Yeah, Thatcher, yeah. You think of all of those people in power at that time.
Not hard to make comparisons. Thatcher versus Theresa May. Wow, no... Reagan versus Trump. Look, I'm not as down on Trump as some, but I still think Reagan just shades him. Although, to be honest, the same old crowd that's railing at Trump hated Reagan, so for them it's no difference, but there you go. I have to say the local leadership, again, then was better. I really do. Really do think that. People of substance. You mentioned you had Labor's longest-serving Prime Minister facing off against a guy who was to be the second longest-serving Prime Minister of any party.
That's right. And you had Keating, you had Costello getting ready to come in. Whatever you think of Jeff Kennett, you turned the place upside down.
Mate, I've got all the time in the world for Jeff Kennett. All the time in the world. But look, and Neville Wran. Look, there's things to say about Neville Wran, but I thought, all in all, compared to the present incumbent, dare I say, what happened? How come everyone shrunk?
We can go back a generation before Whitlam, and you had those times when you had Gorton and Malcolm Fraser sabre-rattling and Billy McMahon. So there were times when...
yes, that's true. That's true. There were times when pygmies ruled the stage again.
That's right.
I tell you what, when you were doing that, I was getting a sense of deja vu. Last time I went to Athens, it was just when they had more crowds ripping up paving stones and belting each other, and the economic crisis, and there was all and that a lot of people couldn't afford to feed their dogs anymore and they just let them loose in the main park, off Sirtaki Square, whatever it's called, and so they were just running loose. It was just, and I looked up at the Acropolis, and you're thinking, look, this was a city once run by giants, and now there's these pygmies at the foot of it.
Yep.
That's how I felt then. And when you were doing your little list, I thought, oh my
incredible,
God, here we go
again.
Yeah.
Even to the point where the last time you and I came face to face was on a trip to Israel with journalists, and it was done. The Jewish Board of Deputies take you over there, you get a look, they take you around. At that stage, I remember we had a meeting with Shimon Peres, who just collected the Nobel Peace Prize, and we were thinking, things may actually be about to get better here.
You may have thought that. I thought he was a bit of a windbag. I shouldn't say that. People really... I'm quickly thinking, am I betraying a confidence in saying this? Anyway, look, to hell with it. Shimon Peres, right? He was a long-serving, he was a Prime Minister for a little while. I think he was always wanting to be a Prime, never got really to any years, did anything of substance. Then Sympathy Vote became President of Israel, gave speeches. He was already, everyone loved him on the left, and peace, peace, peace. He had this wonderful speaking voice. And a giant of Israel, I guess. I didn't really rate him because I thought he had his head in the clouds a little bit and liked the sound of his own voice too much. But anyway, he got his Peace Prize, like you said. The last time I saw Shimon Peres, I was at a party, a big shindig, News Corp, right? It was at a bar after a News Corp conference somewhere in America, I've forgotten where. And one side, there was Shimon Peres holding court. He'd been one of the guest speakers, and only a few people came over. And Rupert Murdoch had walked in, and he was at the other end, and everyone was gravitating to him, and it was so interesting. I think he had one of his big guests. Bill Clinton might have been there, or some big guy like that. And Peres was so proud, so whatever, he refused to move. He was not going to go to them and concede that he was sitting on his own. It was just the most amazing thing, these alpha males up the top there, the way it's just the vanity campaign, really.
Yep.
Who can pull a crowd?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that, absolutely. All right, well, I raised this a moment ago. It's just a personal observation. I was watching Question Time today, and, it can be a real punish watching Question Time, as you know. But this question came from Rebecca Sharpie. She's the Centre Alliance MP from South Australia. She's talking about flying Indigenous flags in the House of Representatives, and she directed the question to the Prime Minister. The term she used was, will the government support this? And there was some toing and froing as Christopher Pyne tried to buy Malcolm Turnbull a bit of time.
I thought it was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that too. That's right. So Rebecca Sharkey from South Australia, she used to be a Liberal, but she sounds like Labor, to be honest. She said, now that we've all united to damn Fraser Anning, who gave that speech yesterday about stop Muslim immigration and make immigration look more like It used to be a reflection of the Australian European Christian background more. She said, now that we've all damned him, as to go further, let us now fly the Aboriginal flag in one of the four corners of this room, meaning the House of Representatives chamber. They've got the Australian flag only, and she wanted the Aboriginal flag. Now, I instinctively thought this is a line in the sand for a moment. Will Malcolm Turnbull buckle? Because how can you celebrate a moment where you supposedly stood against racism and the racial division of Australia and celebrate it by promoting another racial division of Australia, a separate flag for a separate race? I thought, how unself-aware are you, Rebecca Sharkey? And I thought, but Malcolm Turnbull, because Bill Shorten had already got up, the Labor leader, and suggested that he was for it.
Yep. Yeah, okay. And Christopher Pyne was raising a couple of technical points just to give Turnbull a chance to come up with
I thought he was trying to stop the question from being asked at all, because I think he thought that Malcolm Turnbull would fail it. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's just buying Malcolm Turnbull time. But Malcolm Turnbull got up and said, no, there will only be one flag, the Australian flag.
Let's just have a listen to what he said.
While we pay great respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags, the flag hanging in each corner of this room is the flag of Australia.
I thought that was remarkable. It's not what I expected him to say. It's what I hoped he'd say. What did you make of it?
Well, the only thing I thought of when I looked at the words is I know he's a lawyer, and I thought maybe he structured himself to say, well, I said it was the flag of Australia, but I didn't leave out the possibility of changing it. I know he speaks like a lawyer, which annoys us so often.
No, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, think that that's what he meant. Whether it's in his heart to mean it or whether he's realising what party he represents, whatever, that is the statement. I might have quibbled and said, no, we don't celebrate the division of Australia, the overcoming the dividing of Australia by then putting up a symbol of the division of Australia. But then I thought, well, that would have been perhaps a little too confrontational now that everyone's basking in, we're all, smashed, Fraser Anning together and, blah, blah, blah. But I would have liked the reason for his no to be given. But that said, he passed the test.
Presumably he'll be asked about that. And I know we should know Bill Shorten jumped straight in and said that he would support the motion.
So did the Greens.
That's right.
So when Labor wins office, I'm afraid we are going to see the racial division of Australia in our main chamber of Parliament.
Now, I listen to this program regularly. I listen to what you and Steve discuss, and I hear, particularly this week, what you've been saying and your direct appeals to members of the Liberal Party to not commit themselves to the National Energy Guarantee so that they've got some credibility beyond the election. Is that a reasonable summary of what you're saying?
I think it's even more pointed than that. We've already got 10 Liberals and Nationals, backbenchers, saying they're prepared to cross the floor and vote against this National Energy Guarantee, which is actually Malcolm Turnbull's global warming scheme. It's so much so that Labor is suggesting it might back it. Right? That's how much it is. The 10 that are opposing it are mostly from the Conservative side. So Malcolm Turnbull is promoting a scheme that Labor tends to like, but the Conservative of his own Liberal Party hate. Go figure. They're now upset, these 10, because they're just backbenchers. There's still 10 of them. There's a fair amount of them. They're putting pressure on the ministry, on people who are ministers to quit. Because they have to, as a minister, you've got to support the government policy, but if you oppose it, you've got to quit. They want them to quit, to make a real symbol, a line in the sand again. Keith Pitt, who's a minister, a Nationals guy, has refused to say whether he will or won't quit. That suggests he is wobbling. That's got to be a real worry for Turnbull, even more so if Peter Dutton, who's his biggest ally, the guy that's keeping him, a guy from the Conservative side. Have a listen to Ray Hadley was pestering him today, saying, well, not pestering, grilling him today, saying this National Energy Guarantee is a crock. Why aren't you going to quit, and why are you backing it as a minister? Here is Peter Dutton saying you won't quit.
I give frank advice, I can promise you that, to the Prime Minister, to my other colleagues. If I don't agree with what we're doing or with the policy, or I argue vehemently that something should be changed or dropped, I get my way sometimes, other times I don't. And I work as a team player. I'm not going to be a part of the cabinet and then bag the Prime Minister out.
The issue for him and any Conservative minister in this government is this. After the election, should you almost certainly be defeated, you will not be pushing a scheme like this. You will be attacking the Labor government's global warming scheme, and the Conservative leader of the party, because the Liberal left has had their go, the Conservative leader of the Liberal Party cannot be someone who attacks Labor schemes, global warming schemes, having before the election supported an almost equally mad one pushed by Turnbull. So you better decide now your credentials for being Labor leader after the election.
Yep, I found that interesting, that interview, and you would have heard it because, and if you, it's on our website, because Ray was pressing him, and he sounded almost resentful of being pressed on it, and there was a part of it where he was almost suggesting, "Look, talk to me off air. Please don't." He said you wouldn't be criticising Alan Jones on air. And it was quite a testy exchange, but there was nothing in that response that said, "I think this is a really good policy, we should get behind it."
I think you're spot on. And I think in saying that, you've actually, put your finger on exactly why Peter Dutton is tetchy unhappy about being grilled on this. He doesn't support this scheme. He's lost on this scheme. And he doesn't want to be in public defending the scheme precisely for the reasons I've given. After the election, if he's the leader, he can't have this hung around his neck by the Labor government. Yes, but you supported global warming schemes, so why are you opposing ours now? You're just a hypocrite. He doesn't want to be in that position. But the longer he stays a minister under this government defending this scheme, the worse it's going to be for him afterwards.
131873 is the number. It's the Steve Price Show right across Australia. John Stanley in the chair today with Andrew Bolt. 131873. Now, have I said anything wrong? Because I'm just checking. There's almost a drinking game because I've been doing morning radio for about 20 years. So the number of times I say good morning, I might even mention our other radio station, but I haven't done it yet, have I? Have I?
So far, so good, mate.
Very good.
So
very
far,
good.
it's smooth as.
Okay, let's.
I mean, you know the talkback caller number. In the years that have done it, I still don't.
131873 is the
I must
number.
make a note of that
You
one.
can jump on the line now. A couple of lines free. You want to talk to Andrew, take issue with some of that. Talk about the flags in the Parliament. You may have a view on that. 131873 is the number. Yeah, Billy McGee's in here.
Not Billy.
Yeah, it is Billy. Hey, Andrew, how often, and this happens in AFL and in rugby league, where there's a team that looks like in crisis, a coach, Wayne Bennett, he looks like he's on the way out. There's real issues. There seem to be a divide in the player group. So here they are, up against South Sydney, who are up the top of the table running second. They're playing at the moment, 25 minutes in. Billy, what's happening?
Yeah, Brisbane leads, 12 points to 0. Yeah, 2 Corey Oates tries. I don't know what was at that barbecue that Wayne Bennett had earlier in the week, but it certainly worked. Brisbane leading 12 points to 0 over South Sydney, 14 and a half minutes until half-time at Suncorp Stadium.
But Billy, look, what I don't get...
Here we go.
Is, no, mate. I'm after your giant brain in this one.
Okay.
With Billy McGee, you're Billy McGee,
yes.
with Wayne Bennett,
Yep.
I mean, it's absolutely clear. It runs on the board. The man knows how to coach, right?
Yes.
So how is it that suddenly you don't know how to coach? No, we're not even talking about, a national team. You don't know how to coach an NRL team. How does that work?
Brisbane hasn't really hit the heights that we thought they would under Wayne Bennett, besides reaching the 2015 grand final under him, which was his first year back at the club.
Yes.
They really haven't hit the heights, and they're in danger
is it always
of missing
the
the
coach's
top 8.
fault, though?
No, but he's always the easiest person. It's easy to replace
That's
one coach than 25 players, and they've just scored again, Brisbane, this time through Corbin Sims.
So what is this going to do?
This will make it 16-0, and it'll be 18-0 because it's right under the post with 13 and a half minutes.
So a win, what would that do for Wayne Bennett's career?
Look, I think Brisbane's already made its decision. I think Brisbane knows that Wayne Bennett won't be its coach in 2020. And
That's a shame. As you can tell, I know nothing about the game. You knew that from way back when, Billy, but you still can't say so. But as I told you before, having met him twice at parties and got on like a house on fire, I'm suddenly invested with, save
Bennett.
Wayne Bennett.
Save
Absolutely.
Wayne.
Andrew, he'll be coaching next year, and I think the flight to go and meet him will be a little shorter than it was this year. So I think you'll be, and I think when he goes to a club, he demands complete control.
Yep.
And at Brisbane, they gave him complete control, but in the last year, they've decided, well, actually, we want to take back some of that control. He doesn't like it.
Yep.
So if there's a club that's willing, as St George was in 2009,
again,
to give him complete control of everything, the price, the reward for that can be a premiership.
Can I just warn Brisbane, though? I mean, have a look at Damien Hardwick, coach of Richmond.
Yep.
The year after he nearly got turfed out, there was a members' revolt, etc., etc. It was hopeless. He was a joke. He was no good. He then goes and wins the grand final. And now Richmond, for the first time in my long life of supporting them, are number one on the table.
Yep.
I mean, really.
And that's only the 227th time that you've brought up that premiership this year as well.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Some of them are pricey.
Yeah.
We're going to have a party for the 250th.
Price, Greenwood, and all of you.
Oh, no.
All right, thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, John.
Come back in when they've scored another try.
Honestly, the difference between success and a banana skin is suddenly just 1 second of looking away.
Very narrow. Hey, let's take some calls here. Phil is on the line from Melbourne. Hello, Phil.
Hey guys, how you going?
Good.
First of all, I want to say great show, and I love Andrew. I don't agree with him a lot of the time, but I do love you, Andrew.
Oh, that's very kind, but I'm going to have to up my persuasion skills. I must be a bit rusty.
Well, you and I will never get on. I'm a socialist. But anyway, I wanted to ask your opinion. So,
yeah, but hang on, you're young still.
Well, Fraser Anning, he was a wonderful piece of crap yesterday, but I wanted to know, there's a minimum requirement to become a citizen. Is there a minimum requirement in terms of intelligence or knowledge to become a senator? Because I listened to him on Neil Mitchell, and he was appalling.
No, I tell you what, I didn't hear that interview, right? But whatever you might say, I could name several MPs that I've come across that, I interviewed one of them, Bob Catter, last night.
Yep.
Jackie Lambie. I don't want to go and offend too many other people, but I wouldn't consider him, the dumbest that I've ever met by any means.
What does that say about us? It's interesting because I would say the same thing, having covered politics over the years. And Phil's raising an interesting point. Is it because you can't have formal tests, but are our election campaigns, do they focus enough on the local candidates, putting them through the ringer so that we find out a little bit more about them?
Well, the Senate is a bit different, though, because
course,
you can, and particularly in this case where he actually replaced Malcolm Roberts, so he didn't get elected himself. He was number 3 on the ticket. He only got 19 votes personally. So they don't come under scrutiny. Absolutely not at all. And you see some really strange characters then get into Parliament. I think it's weird. And on top of that, of course, it's the Australian thing of, oh, I like that guy, give her a go. You say, oh, that woman's a real goer, she's a battler, I'll vote for her. They actually like it. It's weird.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much for that, Phil. When you think about it, Andrew, we've got a relatively small country in terms of population. We've got a massive number of governments and parliaments, and when you get into the upper houses at the state level, that's when you find some very interesting characters who no one's ever heard of.
Oh, well, how about this character that in Labor, that Musselman, who stopped a Labor guy who praised China the other day, and then at a multicultural function, of all the guests, he singled out the Jewish one and told him he couldn't come in.
Yep.
This is the first Muslim MP in New South Wales. It's like a joke, isn't it? As the Muslim said to the Jew, you can't come in.
Yep.
I mean, what?
Unbelievable. Andrew's on the line from Melbourne. Hello, Andrew.
Hey guys, how are you? Love your show.
Good.
Thank you. On the topic of thanks mate. On the topic of Fraser Anning,
yes.
Like today in The Age, I just nearly threw up when I saw the picture of him and Malcolm Turnbull and Bill Shorten shaking each other's hands, and
I know.
Dr. Anne Alley, the member for Cowan,
in tears,
outdoing Darren Hinch yesterday.
Oh, don't talk to me about Darren Hinch. That was probably the worst of them.
Yeah, look, I just want to say, I'm the person that's considering, voting for the Australian Conservatives because, as Alan Jones said this morning, we've got, farmers committing suicide because of the drought, and we've got these loons in Canberra spending half a day condemning Fraser over 3 words in a 37-minute speech. And to me, seeing Malcolm Turnbull shaking Bill Shorten's hand shows me that he's not interested in free speech, but he's more interested in siding with those on the other side of the floor.
Can you recall the last time that the two men shook hands in Parliament over any issue?
No, it's just all propaganda.
No, it's not just propaganda. I think it's also self-congratulation. They're sort of in love with their nobility.
Yeah, and just lastly, as to this final solution comment, look, I take him on his word. I know you don't. I think
I'm prepared to. I'm prepared on this ground that he's been a defender of Israel. So it seems to me strange that he would go out of his way to use a phrase to offend Jews when he's defended Jews. I mean, why would you do? Where's the votes in that?
Well, two quick things. You only have to see the legislation that he tried to put forward. I think one was to move the Australian embassy out of Tel Aviv into Jerusalem.
Correct.
And, the funding of the money, I think $43 million that we're sending in foreign aid over to, where they're
to be spent by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority when they're subsidising terrorism. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he was against that. So how come he's suddenly an anti-Semite making final solution jokes? That doesn't compute.
And look, 90% of those peanuts in Canberra wouldn't even know what that term final solution meant until someone in the media thought police jumped on it, and they're just all on the bandwagon now.
I think some of them would have known in the context, but to add to your point, the fact that he could give that speech, right, that Darren Hinch then later, after being whacked on Twitter, then emotionally said it was so terrible, it was the worst he'd ever seen, he was shocked, he thought it was a Ku Klux Klan rally, he went home and washed his hands after shaking Fraser Anning's. But this is the point, none of them walked out of the speech. They walked out of Pauline Hanson earlier this year when she wore a burqa in the Senate. They didn't walk out on this one, and they went up and shook his hand. Darren Hinch was there, shaking a big grin. Some even kissed him. What's her name? Ferivanti Wells kissed him. So if it was really that clear and obviously terrible, why were they still there?
All right, Andrew, thank you for your call. Andrew, we'll take a short break. 131873 is our number. It is the Steve Price Night Show, and it's now 28 minutes to 9. In an era of